So in supporting democracy around the world, we face the challenge of authoritarian enclaves. Authoritarian enclaves are subnational political units, so provinces, villages, cities, where it's more difficult to exercise civil liberties and where subnational elections are less free and fair. Now this is a problem because if we want to promote democracy in a country, we want to extend democracy throughout the whole territory. We don't want to have these pockets of less democracy. Now, the varieties of democracy data can show us to what extent this problem of authoritarian enclaves exists around the world, and it also can reveal what the underlying causes of this problem are. So let's start first by looking at some V-Dem data that shows us some information about the freeness and fairness of subnational elections. So to what extent within countries are subnational elections equally free and fair across the country, or do we see variation and possibly some authoritarian enclaves? So these data are from 2012, and the darker the color filling in the country, the greater unevenness there is. So the more likely that subnational elections are free and fair in some places and less free and fair, or not free and fair at all in other places. Now, what's particularly troubling is when you see this unevenness in relatively democratic or democratizing countries, because that means that when there's unevenness, there's some authoritarian enclaves within that country. We can see from this map that there are multiple regions of the world that are affected by this problem of authoritarian enclaves or unevenness in the freeness and fairness of subnational elections. We see dark colors in Latin America, also in Africa, some in Asia, Eurasia. The only regions where there's little or no problem with unevenness in the freeness and fairness of subnational elections are in North America and also in Western Europe. Now, another way we can look at this is in terms of civil liberties. To what extent is this problem of unevenness in civil liberties or authoritarian enclaves a problem across the world? And again, we see multiple regions of the world illustrated by the darker colors as dealing with the problem of unevenness. So just at a descriptive level, the V-Dem data are helpful because they can help us identify where in democracy promotion efforts is democracy, civil liberties, free and fair elections not being spread evenly throughout countries. The next thing the varieties of democracy data are helpful for is identifying underlying causes. So we did this large number of different statistical tests. Interestingly, we found that unevenness or this problem of authoritarian enclaves is just as likely to exist in countries with federal systems of government as it is in countries with unitary systems of government. So regardless of how much autonomy those governors or mayors have to create different institutions and practices in their, the units they govern, nonetheless we're seeing unevenness crosses both federalism and unitary systems. Another interesting negative finding is that country wealth doesn't seem to matter. So whether you're looking at a country with a high GDP or a low GDP, you're just as likely to have the problem of unevenness. So what in fact does matter? What are the underlying causes of this unevenness or authoritarian enclave problem? So first of all, we see that when topography and sociology make a country difficult to govern, we're more likely to see the problem of unevenness. So more specifically, when a country has very rugged terrain, a large population that's ethnically and economically diverse, it's difficult for national government leaders to effectively govern the entire territory. We also find that corruption can distract from democratization. So you may have national government leaders who have some commitment to democratizing the country, but rather than use their interactions and their relationships with subnational government leaders to promote democratic institutions and rights, they may use those opportunities to enrich themselves instead. So this is particularly bad news when you're looking at democratic or democratizing countries, and what this suggests is a few different implications for how to avoid this problem. So to support democracy's development throughout a country, you want to build state capacity and combat corruption. Now, I'm not going to go into any more specifics than that because these generalizations need to be made context specific, right? So the way that you're going to combat corruption in one country may differ from the way you're going to do it in another. But there are two important implications from these different policy ideas. One thing you'll note is neither of them are explicitly related to democracy. They're not likely to pose the risk of programs that are promoting state capacity or combating corruption as being outsiders coming in trying to introduce some foreign system of government. Another observation is that both of them are likely to have positive economic side benefits. So this may be easier ways to deal with this problem of unevenness. So if we want to build on that momentum we often see in national capitals for democracy and make sure that democratic institutions and democratic rights spread throughout the territory of a country, then we want to think more about building state capacity and combating corruption. Thank you.
Thank you.